Good morning. This is Steve.
And I'm Paul, and this is the Better Human Dad's Dadcast. Our mission is simple: to equip and inspire fathers with the tools, knowledge, and the community needed to grow into emotionally present and supportive dads. And today we have a fantastic dad, a friend of ours, Dave Koepsell. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is an honor to be here, guys.
Well, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Dave. We appreciate you too. So, Dave, why don't you give our listeners a little bit of an idea of where you are in your parenting journey, and then let us know from that.
I am in the journey of middle age. I am now 56, and we have four kids, and I have three in their 20s. I have one still 19, one married, and one engaged, one soon to be engaged, maybe. We'll see. And one still living at the house. So I'm kind of spread out. I've been married coming up on 34 years, which is crazy to
Wow,
say.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
it's crazy.
incredible.
It's a crazy number, right? But when you look back at it, it just goes so quick. Life
That it
just
does.
goes so quick. And I've really enjoyed the journey of being a dad. It's been amazing.
Wow, wonderful. And so you said you have four kids. You've been married 32 years. Wow, that's incredible. So maybe we'll jump right into our first question here,
Sure.
Dave. But what does it mean to you? You know, you've had some time to think about the questions. What does it mean to be a better human dad? You know, beyond providing and protecting your family.
When I look at that question, I have to ask a question, and that is, what does it mean to be
Mm,
human? You
yeah,
know,
Mm.
not necessarily just a role of being a dad, but what a you know, there, you as a human, you play all roles to all people. But what does it mean to be human? I think you have to lean into the word intentionality. You've got to be
mm,
Mm.
intentional with your priorities, with your focus, and with anybody you interact with. So I would just begin there with the word intentionality. And as far as to raising my kids, I would say I'm a human raising another human. And
Mm.
okay,
and what I've learned in my journey is that my interactions with my kids have helped me to show. They've actually exposed my blind spots as a dad. And when you start interacting with your kids at all ages, what I found is to be very helpful is choosing to connect with them rather than trying to control them and to control and manipulate an outcome.
mm,
Because as you're raising them, they're also, you're guiding them in the beginning, but as you age up as a human, you're raising little humans into adults, and eventually you go
right,
from controlling the environment they're in. I mean, to a point of putting locks on your refrigerator because they're getting into it and they shouldn't, you know, and things, and we put them in cribs, and then you start to they advance into the teen years, into pre-adulthood, and eventually into adults. But it's the intentionality of being, you know, locked in on where they're at each juncture point. And as dads, sometimes that is you've got to learn that process as you go. I know that after
mm,
the
good
first
point.
two, the second two became a little easier to dial in because I was
Mm,
focused more so not on discovery, but taking what I learned raising the first two and raising the second two in a different way in some aspects.
mm. Yeah, that's a common theme. I really like that word intentionality because, hey, Steve, as soon as he said that word, I saw both of us go,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
very,
Absolutely.
very
Absolutely.
common. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
interesting how you kind of changed from the first two to the second two and how things really changed for you and your wife.
Well, that's about the journey of getting better, right? You
Right.
never want to stay the same.
Yeah.
If you never grow as a father, you go back to the law of the lid, like John Maxwell teaches. You become a lid to
Yeah.
yourself and a lid to not only your potential but also their potential.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Did you
Hmm.
find the first two were different than the second two, or were all four kind of different?
We have a blend of all four kids in the home. If you take like a disc profile and you're looking at disc and like an
Yeah.
assessment, we have one of each letter in the home.
Oh,
And
wow.
you
That's
know,
great.
and I couldn't respond to like my older daughter the same way I would respond to my younger daughter. So,
Right.
you have to have the emotional intelligence to adapt to that, to be, to see them where
Hmm.
they're at,
Hmm.
how they were designed. God created them in, in his identity, and I want to
Yeah.
meet them there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I
Absolutely.
think emotional maturity, even to recognize that one's a D, one's an I, one's an S, and one's a C, and to be able to balance all
Yeah.
of that and speak and act differently with all your children.
They're a
It,
blend, right?
it's almost, sorry.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, go ahead, Steve.
I was gonna say it's almost required. I think we should do disc profiles for our kids and our
Yeah.
family just to see how we all interact. We do it at work, right? Why not do it at home? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very
I
interesting.
know when I took it when I was 19, I discovered things about myself that I was struggling with all my life. So there was some discovery,
Mm,
and a
mm,
lot of being a dad is about discovery. You're discovering not only your nuances, your strengths as a parent, but also your weaknesses as a parent. Where I was the
Yeah.
mm.
fun loving, let's go charge the hill, and my wife was the one that was calculating, that was organized, behind the scenes. And it takes two to raise a family, I believe. There,
Oh
and
yeah.
it
Yeah.
just, you've got to be sensitive to those things.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure.
Well, it's a perfect segue. I know you just talked about, lessons learned, and love to hear maybe some of the lessons learned you had, as you went through parenting and as your kids went from being kids to adults. What's something that came across for you?
It's not about being perfect. It's about being present. Uh,
Mm,
Mm.
there is no cookie cutter approach to parenting, and you can't widget your kids out. You've got to meet them where they're at. And as you know, one of my mentors, his name is Darren Hardy, he talks about being the example, but everybody mimics the leader. And what I found is I saw my
mhm.
kids were mimicking me, and some of the good behaviors I saw, but also there were some bad examples I was giving my kids. So if I was going to lead by example, I had to choose how I was going to show up, like in my response. If even driving a car, they would watch me, and they look around and go, "Is that gonna? What's he gonna do here?" That person who just cut in
Right.
front of
Right.
them. I could raise my finger or
Oh,
yell at them, or complain, or I could just back off the gas, ease into it, and say, "Hey," because they're going
Yeah.
to model the examples I give them, and
That's so
absolutely.
that's
true. There's so many examples or so many opportunities to show your kids what the right thing to do is, right?
mhm,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And they watch.
Yeah.
And they watch every step. Be interesting. I read this recently that you should ask your kids to do an impression of you and see what they do, and that would really be an opener into all the things that they see. That'd
That
be
would
kind
be
of fun.
that would be very telling. And Steve, I've met three of Dave's children, and I could tell you,
Oh,
they're all just so wonderful.
Mm.
We met his first boy, Jordan, in San Diego years ago at a Darren Hardy thing, and his son was such a
mm-hmm.
standout. It was really the catalyst for us to create our parenting group. So,
Mm.
Dave, you're an inspiration for all of us. And so, let me ask this question. Um, you think back over the years of all the success and some of the stumbles. Was ever, if you ever had a redo, would you actually do anything different?
Wow, that's a powerful question, and
Mm,
that's a powerful question. And I don't think there is. When I look at that question, I have to kind of reorganize it in my own head. Is that I don't think you can ever
mm,
redo, but you can restart
okay,
at different
right,
junctures.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because once the water goes under the bridge, once time goes on, once that action or word or whatever you do with your
Yeah.
kids is out, you can't redo it. It's already there. It's
right,
already painted. It's already painted in their emotion, in their memory. And I would say for me as a dad, looking back at it, and having a second chance to raise four kids, not just one or two, I would be less distracted. It's really
right,
easy to become
Mm-hmm.
distracted in your career, in the things that you want to do, and 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 what I saw a lot of times is that the I distraction is something that comes natural to me because of my ADD. I'm just naturally looking for the squirrels in life, and to
mm,
you know, that there were moments that that I wanted to be more physically present. And I was, but sometimes I was mentally not there. I was somewhere else because I was dealing with stressors of work or trying to deal with things that were, big on my agenda to do as a professional, and
Right.
thinking about the work, the pressure, and what the next goal is. And at young ages, your kids don't know what you're doing. They just know, oh, dad's doing his thing.
Right.
And if I could go back, I would protect the small moments more fiercely.
Mm.
Yeah.
And because the little moments, they actually make the big ones. Everything stacks on top of each other.
Sure do.
And to be
Yeah.
moment makers in my kids' lives. It's not saying I was a horrible dad and I didn't make moments with them. It's just, dialing back that sometimes that, as I grew, I knew that the environment of being a dad got better. And the thing is, you don't get those seasons back. Once they're spent, they're spent.
Yeah.
And you don't realize how
I
valuable they are until they're gone.
Yeah.
absolutely. I love that little moments make the big moments. I haven't heard that before. It really resonates with me, and how all those little things you do add up, don't they? And being a dad.
Mm-hmm. They do.
Hmm.
They do.
And you know what?
Kind of along.
Go ahead, Steve.
So it's running along this same lines, I guess. I'd be very interested if you were to, concerning it, what you've done and how you've raised your kids. What advice would you give other dads who maybe came to you and say, "Look, I'm going to have a family. What do you think I should be doing?"
What are you grounding your kids' identity in?
Mm.
And their identity, and for me, the biggest part of our family's life and my life is my faith, and grounding my kids, not in what the temporary world has to offer, but what an eternal perspective. And to me, how God looks at what love is, forgiveness and love and principles and values, because that not only shapes the heart, but it also shapes the mind. And there are a lot of things that are out there that are pagan for your kids' minds and their hearts. And what I will tell you is that best advice I would give dads would be, you've got to be the loudest volume in their head. It's like that knob, on the radio. It's like, just turn the music up just a little bit more, because it's a really good groove, when you're listening on the radio, you just want to turn it up a little bit more.
That's good. Yeah.
I don't want to be an overbearing dad or parent, but I wanted to be the loudest volume in their head, knowing that that volume can be trusted and liked and wanted and desired, because there's so much out there that really is on the hunt for your kids' attention. They're marketed to every day, they're solicited to every day with so many negative things, and you've got to be that light, and you've got to be that guide, that tour guide through life. Like, if I were to say that, if I were to ask you guys, hey, we have an opportunity to go to the Amazon jungle, for a month and tour the Amazon jungle. However, we don't have a tour guide. Would you really want to go?
It'd be a little bit apprehensive, that's for sure.
It'd be tough. It'd be very difficult.
Yeah.
But if I said, I have an all paid expense trip, we're going to go to the Amazon, and we're going to go to the depths of the Amazon, and I have with us one of the best tour guides that money could buy, and most experienced, you'd be like, well, that sounds a little different, right?
Yeah.
I'm already packed. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Where do I book my flight? For sure.
Yeah.
But it's a great metaphor, Steve, right?
Yeah.
So I would look at parents and say, you really become your children's tour guide through life. And because you experience things first, and they experience it behind you. They also experience your presence. They also experience who you are in times of tension, times of pressure, times of ease, times of relaxation, and trying to be, the same in all environments, and not be this up and down individual. So there's a lot to pack in that question and advice, because the conversation of just giving advice, I think there's advice for different stages of how you're raising your kids.
Absolutely.
things certainly change for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually come up a few times, Dave. We were talking about it was almost different seasons of kids, where they're when they're young, and then when they become teenagers and then when they become adults, and how it is different. And like you said, you're providing that guidance, right?
Yeah,
And helping them navigate using the Amazon analogy, navigate the
Yeah.
waters, and how do you get through that jungle? Because it's a challenge every
yeah,
day.
Well,
yeah,
I do know my kids
Yeah.
know how to navigate the Amazon, and that's Amazon.com. I do know that. Okay.
yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's
And
a
they
good
show
one.
me
Yeah,
things of like,
Yeah.
hey, Dad, did you know?
That's
Yeah. Can we get this? Right.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but, it
yeah.
is true.
That's a
yeah.
good next point.
Dave,
Um,
Dave, let me ask this question. There are some dads who just are steady down here, and you've demonstrated through our interactions with our parenting group and our friendship is that you're way up here. And I'm curious what got you from here to here. What was the motivation for you to be this better human dad that you really are?
Uh, Reflection. When
hmm,
you look back, it goes back to intentionality, but it also goes back to, do you want to?
All right.
It's not can I, it's how can I? How can I get there?
Mm,
And, you become the people you run with. It's just like
right.
telling your kids, you become the sum of the 5 people you hang out with, your friends. That's
Yeah.
what you
So
become.
important. So
exactly.
And
important. Yeah.
your surroundings and your mentors and your people, your influences in your life will dictate what your future is. Guarantee you that's going to translate directly into your kids' lives. But
Yeah.
I'm not saying, I will tell you this too, that we've had some rocky roads, in raising our kids. It hasn't been a bed of roses. I mean, there's been a lot of
Hmm.
thorns with those roses. And
Yeah.
in
Absolutely.
becoming a dad of influence, becoming a dad of respect, is not something that just naturally happens. It's not like I wave the wand. It's like shing. No, it's hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to lean
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
subject matter, and a lot of it too was looking at how I was raised. There were aspects of my father in my relationship with my dad that I would look at and go, man, there were some great examples. But there were also some things that I felt that there was a void. And in that void, I
Right.
wanted to change that for my kids. But I asked to look back and go, Dad, how were you raised? And
Mm,
honoring my father, not throwing swords at him, but seeking to understand how he was raised, helped me to understand how he raised me. And I can cherry
right.
pick the
Oh,
good things from that, and I can add those to my life. But it's a maturing process that you go through as a father, because I know that in my late 20s, when we had our first kid, man, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It's like it's a
Mm,
little
yeah.
it's a little, what do you do with this? It kind of shows up on your
yeah.
doorstep, and it wasn't a stork that brought it. I mean,
Sure.
you go through the
Yeah.
pregnancy, you go through all this, and you're like,
Yeah.
wow. And by
Mm,
the time your first kid falls, you're like, oh, are you okay? And by the time you get to your fourth kid, they fall, you're like, just get up, let's go. It's
yeah.
like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
sensitivities to things. You're more hyper focused with the first on certain things than you were with the last. But the
Yeah.
biggest thing
We
I
talked to
would
a
tell
dad,
you,
and he was saying, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you got it, Paul.
No, I think there's a little bit of a delay in the feed. I was just saying we interviewed a dad, and he said his first child, they had a whole bunch of pictures, and the last child that they had, there was like, there's a couple somewhere, so it's quite interesting what you're saying about the fall down, get back up, and let's go.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
true, true.
Um, so in your journey, we'd love to hear. Are there some lighthearted stories or a story you'd love to share about being a dad with your kids?
Okay, so your kids are great at calling you out, right? It's like they know, and I'll share a couple stories with you when it comes to um, my kids calling me out, and that is that because not only do I have moments with my kids in the work environment because they work for me and they get to see me as a leader there, but they also get to see me as a leader at the house. And
Hmm.
and there were some moments that my kids were able to help me point out some blind spots of me. And one of those is that I was being the overcommitted parent type thing, and this is not
Right.
only something that they brought out, but it's something they had conversation with my wife, and through my wife, she brought it up, and she says, you make a lot of false promises to your kids. That when the language that I speak to them, like I'll leave in the morning, and I said, I'll see you after school. Hey, Dad, can we do this? I said, we'll see if we can. So what that did is it created a hope in them, and then things got
Right.
triggered at work.
Mm,
They were anticipating me being someplace, and I wasn't there.
mm,
So what it did, it started created this gap, this chasm, that what I spoke to them, I never wanted to let dads never want to let their kids down, but sometimes it's we're not speaking, where they understand at their age for their understanding. For me, I'm like, great, I'm going to be home 2 hours later because things just happened at work that I needed to deal with. But in their
right.
minds, they're like, well, Dad promised he would be here, and he's not here. So I
Right.
had to
Right.
really dial in something different. There was a blind spot of mine, and I'm grateful that
It's cool.
that I was willing and that I had ears to hear.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
um,
Yeah. Dave, maybe tell us about. I remember when you were talking about your children. Because as high achievers, we all want our kids to watch this video, watch that video.
mm,
And I remember you saying one time about your child, one of your children, just wanting dad.
yeah, yeah,
Can you?
yeah.
I think that's a solid reminder for all of us. So maybe give us a little bit of a rundown of how that came to be.
We we man, this is good. That's a great question and great point. I remember talking about that, and
Hmm.
sometimes we want something for our kids so much that they're not ready to have that want for themselves,
Yeah.
and it's like something that we found. So it's like right now in my life where I am, I can discover something that is so rich and so good, and I'm learning, and immediately I turn my head and they go, you need this, and it's like, no, we don't need that, Dad, not now. and
Yeah.
and what I found is that I was impressing um, my personal growth agenda on them,
Mm.
and they didn't want to grow at the pace I wanted to grow. And they're like, Dad, this is
Mhm.
all good stuff, and I appreciate this. He says, but that's just not where we're at right now. Can
Yeah.
you back off? Can you just back off a little bit? I'm like, well, yeah. Sorry. And instead of you speaking about them, why don't you speak about you and your life? Tell us more about you and that connection that we can have. Because
Nice. Nice.
I'm now a young adult, and I'd really like to know what you were like when you were 18, when you were 19, when you were 20.
Hmm.
Can you
Mm.
share that with me? And it turned into trying to teach them and more, as I said, connect with them. It's real easy to miss the connection.
Right. Right.
Mm.
Yeah. That
It,
connection really is what really matters most, I think. Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you a way that I connected with my kids as I grew up, and that is, I never. There were things I did that I didn't have interest in, but it became my interest because it became my kids' interest.
Mm.
And it
mm,
started with my daughter. She came home one summer from camp and she says, Dad, I want a pony. I'm like, great. I'm glad you want a pony. But what we found is that this became not necessarily an obsession for her, but it became an arena where she found herself.
Mm.
And we
nice.
started doing horseback riding, and we started doing these things, and I started going to the barn with her and mucking stalls and riding with her. And I'm like, I'm looking around going, I'm on a horse. You didn't think about this.
Yeah.
But
Right.
what turned into it turned into her passion became my passion,
Mm.
because I wanted to meet my daughter where she was at. I wasn't going to, because I got to say, no, you got to go this direction. But I met her where she's at, and what happened? It helped her getting into the horse arena, and eventually we ended up buying a horse and then getting another horse and then having another horse given to us. Then she rescued a horse. Now I got four, that I take
Right.
care of. That
It's good.
years later, they're not just pasture ornaments. They're they're
Mm, mm,
reflections of her development. They're
Mm.
reflections of what brought her out of a pit of a time of her life that she was being bullied, and that
Mm.
became her healing
oh,
process, and a time of
Right.
connection
Right.
for us to connect to say, hey. And then my second son, when we were done with Boy Scouts, and he said, I don't want to do Boy Scouts, Dad. I had enough with Cub Scouts. I said, okay. And he said, I said, what do you want to do, son? He goes, I want to skate. Skateboarding? Okay. So, we found ourselves at every skate park possible in the
Right.
area where I live, right? And
yeah.
I ended up, having two or three longboards in my closet. And eventually,
Yeah.
Mm, mhm.
I would find myself at the skate park, not 1 hour, 2 hours. It was a whole afternoon. But it was a point of
Right.
connection
Wow.
for my son and I, and I went there with him to meet him
Mm.
there, and it was one of the most joyous
Yeah.
times of my life. And I can tell you stories about all of my kids in these arenas
Right.
because
Mm.
it was what they wanted, and it wasn't an inconvenience. And a lot of times, what I find out with parents and with parenting is that
Mm.
our kids are not an inconvenience. We brought them into
No.
this
Yeah.
world, and we should be really intentional about leaning into their world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, well,
It's incredible that,
yeah.
that power of spending time with your kids and just how they grow and how you grow. Those are great stories,
Yeah.
that you've shared. Those are fantastic.
I really like too, Steve and Dave, about how you found that one thing that helped your child, and it really it was like a catalyst for connection. It was horses with your daughter and skateboarding with your son too. So that's a powerful lesson for all of us dads to take away from today.
Mm,
Absolutely. We want to wrap it up. We got one last question if you're good.
sure.
Just around, could you share maybe a call to action with other dads, that suggesting maybe they do something to become better human dads?
You have got to want to.
Oh,
A lot of times we sit on the sidelines of life and we ask
hmm,
ourselves, can I? Well, you have
Mm.
to switch the mindset and the heart set. We talk a lot about mindset, but what's your heart set towards your
that's
kids,
nice.
towards your being as a father? And I look at the title dad, right? You got one shot at this thing. You got one shot
Yeah.
at being
Yeah,
the best possible father you can be to your kids. One shot. No,
Hmm.
it doesn't stop just because they're raised. I think it's more. There's more time spent, and there's more interaction, and there's more philosophical conversations going on now than ever. Now that my kids are in their 20s and
mm,
late teens, and I think you just graduate to the next level, next season of where they're in, because it puts you in a
yeah,
different season. So that the call to action is, it doesn't just stop. It gets richer and better as they get older,
Mm.
and and lean in because your kids need you. They need their tour guide. They need their
yeah,
dad at different junctures, and they need their moms at different junctures. And I'll tell you what, behind the scenes, I'm beating my chest up here as a father, but I tell you, they have an amazing mother, and
Mm.
they would not be
hmm,
where they're at without her influence in their life as well. So I've got to do a shout out, to their mom, because she is an
Yeah.
amazing mom and an amazing, like, expression of love and care to them. And
Yeah.
it's just, the dad perspective is you've got to keep your mind grounded, because everything is the stability sometimes, and it's
Yeah.
okay. And I would say one last thing I would say, um, speaking to my kids, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
vulnerable with your kids. It's okay to
Mhm.
like let your guard down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good
Some
point.
some
Well,
great wisdom. Great wisdom.
amazing conversation.
Yeah.
Well, thanks,
Yeah.
Dave. Once again, thank you. A great conversation and some
Yeah.
incredible nuggets of advice that you shared. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Some great takeaways today,
Absolutely.
Dave.
Absolutely. My
And I,
pleasure.
yeah. And I think every dad that watches this Dadcast today is going to be sitting there going, that's very interesting. So, Dave, we just want to say thank you for your time and for your ongoing wisdom. It's so much appreciated. And thank you so much.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure. I look forward to connecting with you guys again. You all have a great day.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dave.
Have a great day.
Take
Okay,
care.
take care. Bye bye.